Hands down, the most important weather item tonight is powerful Hurricane Melissa sitting at a Category 5 storm. It is the strongest possible hurricane. We'll talk about the details, and obviously, the island of Jamaica is just on pins and needles right now. It's going to pass over that island. There's no doubt about that. I'll give you some details. Hi, welcome to Weather to Watch. I'm meteorologist Ted Keller. Followed a lot of hurricanes in my day, but this one is ranked very high. It has maximum sustained winds now at 175 miles per hour, putting it at the top of the Saffir-Simpson scale. Watching this visible satellite image from the mid to late afternoon before the sun starts setting, it's just a mind-boggling thing to look at, and I actually can appreciate it for what it is and take it with a little bit of awe and wonder. And then it depresses me to know that this is going to kill some people in Jamaica. I find that unavoidable, probably. And it's unfortunate, but that's just the reality of these types of storms. It's slow moving. The high winds alone would be a trouble. But Jamaica, of course, is a mountainous island. There's going to be extra rain wrung out of this thing. Slow movement's going to add to those totals, too. We'll take a look at that in a minute. At one time, there was even a smaller vortex rotating around the inner core of this right there, which happens on some of these more powerful storms. It just an amazing feat of nature, really. And like many powerful hurricanes, if you watch very carefully, you'll notice that there's a net motion in the upper atmosphere where these thinner-looking clouds is to expand. So there's actually an expansion of clouds going this way. And then the rotation of the clouds at that same level is actually this way. And it is spinning in a opposite direction of the low pressure circulation, which goes that way. So if you're thinking, well, don't highs spin that way? Absolutely correct, because literally there is a high pressure area at that level above such storms, which is evacuating air, which is what allows these things to deepen to such incredible levels. We'll take a look at Hurricane Melissa from a IR satellite perspective. And so this is basically the tops of the storms being inferred by their cloud temperature. So the level of IR radiation, what temperatures are being radiating at. So you see these purples have really gotten very intense in the last couple of cycles here. Cold tops, and that classic kind of shrimp shape to this where it's just kind of feeding around itself. Now, these little latitude and longitude lines are interesting. See that little box right there? I like the fact that those are there, because when I was watching this morning when I first got up, this hurricane was still moving just about due west, and I'm thinking to myself, well, it better turn quickly. And it did. And you can see the last couple of frames, it's moved to the northwest. But if you'll notice very carefully, the last couple of frames, it actually moved west and even dipped a little bit to the southwest. So here's the deal on these storms. I'm always amazed that something that is circulating at 175 mile per hour sustained winds can be spun or turned by the calmest and just quietest of wind shear. So there is an upper level system that's going to come in from this direction. So the lines are going to be like this, the upper level winds, very weak, but enough to turn that storm. But on the other side of the coin, this is such an anomaly of nature to have something this deep that they can actually make their own rules a little bit. So wobbling is very, very common. I remember watching Dorian several years ago over the northern Bahamas. And, Florida was literally like right here. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but, the models knew the wind data and got it right. That's another thing I may comment on too. Like when you're over the open Caribbean like this, the number of upper level wind stations decrease. And I know we do a lot of remote sensing now. I'm not saying it's inaccurate, but I am saying that it could have an impact maybe. Like they don't take as many balloon measurements out here, so it may have impacted the exact timing of this turn back to the north and northeast. Let's go to the next map, and I'll explain a little bit what's going on. So this is at 5 o'clock. They tagged it right there. It's going to be moving at first slowly to the north between now and 2 a.m. Pick up a little bit of speed. They've already moved the center of this from here yesterday to here. So there's already that trend that it was built in that it would probably hang or wobble a little bit more before moving back to the north and northeast, and that's going to be affecting the western portion of the island more, although the entire island is going to feel the effects, obviously. Now, I didn't do an intense survey or anything, but my feeling for Jamaica is that the population centers, clusters are there, and, of course, around Kingston. So any more to the west would have a more negative impact on the wind threat of this storm, which is substantial, obviously. And then certainly Cuba needs to watch this, even though the forward speed will pick up a little bit. The southeast portion of Cuba is still under a hurricane warning. That's what the red is. And even some of the islands of the Bahamas, it'll pick up speed greatly as it passes over Cuba and begins to go back out over the open waters of the Atlantic. It's been an interesting storm to watch, just real quick, because it just started as a depression and a cluster of thunderstorms, moved barely west. I mean, it's just very slow motion. Then it had some very erratic motion where it even moved back to the east and southeast a little bit, and then back. It became a hurricane around here and a major hurricane around here. And of course, that's its current trajectory. As far as additional 3-day rainfall is concerned, so interior areas of Jamaica, as you can see there, and that's on the right forward flank of the storm where the winds are going to be going up into the interior mountains and orographic lift is going to be maximized. So you're talking about 20 to 30 inches scale on the right there in that purple area, with 16 to 20 in that darker maroon area. Just about the entire island is going to get probably at least a foot to a foot and a half of rain, and of course a lot more in the central core of that. And it would be safe to say that this would move a little bit more west if the hurricane does, but it is an orographic issue too, so there's not as many mountains if you do that. All that aside, these are minor little nuances to what is an incredibly devastating storm that's going to hit Jamaica. This is the 13th named storm of the season. You can see them all there. If you see reds and purples, they're hurricanes. If you see yellows and greens, they're tropical storms. The exact tally this year has been for 13 named storms. All these are the forecast that was made on August 7th here in white. Hurricanes just at the lower end of the threshold of what was forecast. Major hurricanes, well, in the center or even higher. So the takeaway on this is, as a forecast for number of storms, it's a little short. But as a forecast for the strength of the ones that do occur, it's pretty much spot on. Well, thankfully, in the lower 48, while there are storms, nothing, of course, by comparison. You can even see the cirrus clouds down in the bottom right-hand corner right next to my head here, the outflow from Melissa. But we do have our own little swirls. We have one off the northeast coast. There's one here in the southeast. There's another strong push up here. If I go and take a look at the 500 millibar flow, there indeed, right on target, is that one low you saw in the swirl. One here just to the west of Nashville, and another deep trough of low pressure digging, as we say in the field, in through the mountains. It's going to really carve out this storm. I'll show you that in a minute. But the jet stream winds are very powerful. These are very strong winds at the 500 millibar level, about 18,000 feet. If we take a look at the surface map, high pressure is dug in across the Great Lakes. The ridge of high pressure extends all the way down into the southeast, where the cold front has made it. Warm front trying to advance a little bit more up through Texas. Not going to have very much luck because, again, we have a new area of high pressure digging in with that jet stream flow. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So this is the model guidance here. This is the ensemble for the European model. So strong 500 millibar flow winds over Colorado and Wyoming on Tuesday. Tomorrow, this is what we call a negative trough. So this thing is just going to deepen. A lot of times these cause surface lows to occlude and cut off at the 500 millibar level as well. And in fact, by Wednesday, we have this really strong low over the Three Corners region, I guess you would say, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi. But be very, very strong winds over Alabama and parts of Mississippi. So these are, 110 to 115 knot winds, or 120 mile, 130 mile per hour winds at the 18,000 foot level. That's nothing to sneeze at. This would be snow if it were later in the season. Not quite cold enough in the core of this yet, but pretty darn close. And this is really going to be a rainmaker for this area here. I'll show you that forecast in a minute. And if we go to Thursday, this thing is still cut off, but it advances to the northeast. Another little wave coming through the northern plains. Very interesting weather. Fall weather, of course, is really kicking in. A freeze watch is in effect from portions of Kansas right through the heart of the Texas Panhandle, portions of New Mexico. We've got freeze warnings around the Denver area and through some of the higher elevations, or actually they're lower elevations of the western parts of Colorado now. Winter weather advisory in a few isolated locations, and I believe that's a winter storm warning right there, Yellowstone. Yeah, I think it is. Anyway, not much going on these 3 to 7 day weather hazards. So we go through and start this on Thursday, which is the 30th, and go through the 3rd. And the only thing showing up is that heavy rain pattern I talked about in the northeast. We'll expand upon that in a minute. Let's take a look at the temperatures. Are they fall-like? They sure are. If you see greens and blues, it's below normal. We have high temperatures only in the 50s and maybe in some cases only in the 40s in this area right here. The edges of it are a little bit above normal, but not too bad. If it were a darker shade of red, it would be well above normal. Same if it were a darker shade of blue, it would be well below normal. Nashville will only get to 55 on Thursday. And so very cool air induced by both the clouds, the rain, and just the fact that it's another push of cool air. And then by Saturday, the nation divided. The eastern half, pretty cool. Western half heating up a little bit. And that's reflected in the forecast even more down the line, Sunday through Thursday. So the eastern U.S., pretty high confidence of below normal, while and even higher confidence of above normal temperatures through much of California, Arizona, Nevada, and also Utah. Here's a radar loop late on this Monday afternoon. A couple of heavy thunderstorms there moving across the Florida Peninsula. And this is part of a rain system that's going to continue to move slow, move up the East Coast, and pretty much not quit. Because look at this 5-day forecast. And it's not torrential rains, but it's adding up through much of the Northeast. There are patches of drought out there, so this may or may not help depending on where exactly these little bubbles of higher precipitation show up. Still pretty wet in the Pacific Northwest, but it's just a small sliver. And this is the track of the hurricane, by the way. And then if we go just kind of zooming in a little bit, you see very common 2 to 3 inch totals, maybe a few 4-inch topographic totals there in the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina, maybe approaching 3 inches on the lower Hudson there into New England as well. And as far as the confidence level for precipitation for that Sunday through Thursday period, still, again, pretty confident of a wet Pacific Northwest and a pretty dry Texas area and the surrounding states as well. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.